Welcome to the Listen for Life Aphasia Podcast. Today, I'm pulling back the curtain. I'm going to let you listen in on a conversation I had with Mary Osborne. Mary is an occupational therapist, and her business is supporting families and individuals who are living with dementia. Mary has a zone of genius. Her knowledge, her compassion, her empathy is second to none in this area. She brought me in as a guest speaker to her membership a few weeks back, and she graciously is letting me share our recording with you. We'll talk speech pathology, we'll talk about dementia care. There's some overlap with aphasia care, so I think you will get a lot of benefit from this episode. Give it a listen.
Welcome to the Listen for Life podcast with Genevieve Richardson. Genevieve is a speech-language pathologist rehabilitating adults with communication challenges after a stroke or due to a neurological impairment. Get equipped with knowledge from experts in the field and professionals you need to know. We'll hear stories and experiences from others who are navigating life with aphasia. So, put your earphones in and take a walk outside. This isn't just a podcast. This is a community, a resource, and a support system. We're in this together. Do life.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is the first Q&A for you guys. Today we have a special guest, Genevieve from Do Life Speech Pathology. So welcome, Genevieve. Thank you for being here. Well, tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
So I'm a speech pathologist. I've been in the industry for 30 years. I've always specialized in working with adults who have had a stroke or conditions like Parkinson's, or sometimes multiple sclerosis comes up, or any kind of neuro event. So my business, I'm in Austin, Texas. I have a private practice called LIFE Speech Pathology. And my specialty is aphasia and chronic aphasia and Parkinson's and some related things like primary progressive aphasia. So the business is all about helping my clients feel seen, heard, and understood, because communication is complicated, as we all know, and it takes a guide to help you find your way, because sometimes the rehab system is not enough, and you have to do more than that. As you know, that's why Mary and I are kindred spirits. That's the area that she's trying to serve with dementia, and that's the area I'm serving with aphasia, because what is allowed is just not enough, and you have to have so much more if you want to get back to the life you love. My specialty is telepractice, so doing this on Zoom, even though I don't get to see you all, I get to see Mary. But I've been on telepractice for the last 10 years, and it's just been an amazing opportunity to reach a greater variety of people.
So you're a speech language pathologist, and I know a lot of people, when they hear the word speech therapist, they think speech production, you're going to help me talk, but you do so much more than that. So can you briefly just explain to everybody like what a speech therapist does, like different areas that they touch on besides the whole speech production?
Absolutely. Okay. So I'm in the adult space. So first I will differentiate the kid space from the adult space, because it's two really different animals. But a speech pathologist, and the reason why we have that such a funky name, is because we are allowed to diagnose within our area. We get to be autonomous. We don't need to have a doctor say someone has aphasia. We are allowed to, with our tools and our training, diagnose someone with aphasia, for example, or a cognitive communication disorder. So in the adult world, it's far more than just speaking. It's not how you put the words together. It's the thinking behind it. It's the concepts.
Yes. And I'm glad you explained that, because y'all do so much more than that. Because I know if I'm working with a patient, they're like, oh, I think I have a speech therapist, but I don't really need anyone to help me with my talking,
Right. Oh my God. And the other thing I'll clear up is speech therapist is the same as a speech pathologist. because we have to, so by training, we have to have a master's degree, and then we have to do a full clinical fellowship year after we graduate before we're licensed.
And so
And
that's when the speech language pathologist, like that title comes in, or is it
not
just?
necessarily. I think what it was, Mary, is to make us match more with physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech language pathology. Technically, if you looked at our National Association website, it's speech language pathology and hearing. So
Yeah.
there are audiologists that specialize in the hearing, the literal
Mhm.
hearing part, and they are also part of our profession.
Okay. Yeah. I'm always just so used to saying speech therapist, I guess, because speech
Yeah.
therapist, physical therapist, occupational therapist, but
Right, because what's a pathologist otherwise? Like a medical doctor that's a pathologist,
yeah.
something very different. But
Yeah.
it basically it's because we're allowed to diagnose.
Yes.
We can diagnose in our field of expertise.
Love.
So you will still have, when you work with kids with stuttering or speech delay, articulation issues, ADHD, autism, there's plenty of speech language pathologists that work in their area too. It's just never been my gig.
Yes. I'm always been in
Yeah.
adults. I used to think that
Yeah.
I wanted to work in pediatrics, but I think I had like a week rotation and then I was like, no, this is not for me. So
No, I had to do, it was during my master's degree, I had to do an internship in a school district.
Mhm.
And it was the longest 5 months of my life because
Yeah.
I knew when I went into the field that I wanted to work with adults.
Yeah. So you specialize in strokes and aphasia. And I know we've been throwing around the word aphasia. Can you tell us what that word means? We hear this a lot.
Aphasia, yeah. So you're not born with aphasia. It's an acquired condition. And aphasia by definition is any impairment in speaking, listening, reading, writing. So if you think of anything you do with language,
Mhm.
so it's how you form the words and say them. It's how you think of the words to put your words in order in a sentence and how you say that sentence. It's how you read. It's how you look at your junk mail and know that you don't want that piece of junk mail and you throw it in the trash. It's how you type and write and text, pay your bills, those kinds of things. So any impairment in that, it's usually caused by a stroke, but I have clients who have had other neurologic issues. I have a 20-year-old right now that I'm working with that had a benign brain tumor that was kind of deeper down in his brain. So it interfered with the connections of his language.
Mm.
So where we've got him back to talking, originally he couldn't even talk. Mary, he
Um,
couldn't get his voice out. It took us months just to hear his voice from laughing.
oh my goodness. Was this, I know, so there's two types of aphasia, correct? Expressive and receptive aphasia.
That's one way to think of it.
Got it.
So I
Okay.
guess that's the old way. And now we think of it, there are actually 7 categories of aphasia.
Wow,
There's,
there's 7. Okay.
there's fluent and there's non-fluent.
Mhm.
So I think it's actually easier to conceptualize it. Fluent means you have the normal cadence of your speech. Like I'm talking now, my voice goes up and down, it's flowing. But someone who has fluent aphasia, you may not understand their words. It might come across like they're speaking in a foreign language,
Okay.
right? Like it sounds like you should be understanding them, and that's your loved one standing in front of you and talking and looking normal. There could be made up words, and then there's words that often like switch places, the sounds switch places, or they might drop a syllable. The idea is they sound like you should understand them. Like their facial expression, their voice, it all matches up. There's 4 fluent aphasias, and the reason we quantify those is it's just based on a constellation of symptoms. But
Okay.
then let's contrast fluent with non-fluent. Non-fluent is like halting. They can't get a word out. Comprehension tends to be better with non-fluent. Their comprehension means understanding.
And what we may have heard this referred to, this would be the expressive aphasia where they're having difficulty getting that word out. It's
Yes.
the
Yeah.
phone. Oh,
Yeah. They
the
struggle to just
struggle.
get the words out. But the fluent aphasia sounds like it should be normal, but the characteristic is their comprehension, their listening is horrid.
Okay.
You say, "Do you like sticks?" "Oh, yes, I love sticks." Or sometimes they can't even say the word back. "I love," and you think that they're understanding, but they're really not.
Gotcha.
Fluent, non-fluent, those are the biggest categories.
Do you see one more than the other when you're helping
I tend
individuals?
to, I tend to have more of the non-fluent aphasias, but right now I have 3 people with fluent aphasia, and they're all different. They're in the same category, but yet they're very different from each other. Just like we all have fingerprints that are different,
Yes.
every aphasia is different. We
And that's
try
what
to
I,
quantify them
yes.
just like you do with dementia symptoms.
Exactly. I was like,
And
everybody's so different, and there's over 100 different types of dementia. So it becomes really difficult because everyone's dealing with their own set of challenges and different things that they're different concerns that they're seeing with their loved one. And that being said, I feel oftentimes what I've seen the most in my practice is that expressive aphasia, difficulty getting the words out. I have seen that in the majority of individuals living with Alzheimer's type dementia.
sure,
Um,
absolutely.
so,
And
so, so this being said, aphasia doesn't just happen with individuals who have experienced a stroke or some sort of brain injury. We do see this in individuals living with dementia. So I guess let's talk about too, like how this is different in the world of like strokes, someone living with dementia, because in my practice, from what I've seen, when we're working with individuals living with dementia, we're having to think of ways to help meet that person where they're at and help maintain their current level of functioning for as long as possible. So if you are working with someone, let's say like they're in the mild cognitive impairment stage, or maybe they're in the early stages of dementia, and you notice that they're having difficulties getting the words out, what can you just tell us, give us like an example of what this may look like? And if you've provided services to someone who is living maybe with mild cognitive impairment or early stage dementia, how you've helped or what this looks like and how you've helped.
sure. So I'm going to take it from the perspective, something we haven't yet touched on is primary progressive aphasia. So it will eventually turn into a dementia, meaning there's a memory component to it, but it
Mhm.
often starts with an aphasia issue. It impacts their language in some way, whether it's understanding the meaning of words, being able to say the words, or being able to put words in the right grammatical order, subject, verb, object, the cat is black. Like they might mix those up.
Yes.
Um, so whether it's primary progressive aphasia, mild cognitive impairment, or the initial stages of something like an Alzheimer's, we are all about understanding the person's strengths. We build. When I do a consultation, it doesn't matter who I see. We always build from the foundation of strengths, because who wants to be pessimistic, right?
Yeah.
There's enough. You turn on the TV, it's pessimistic. It's about what do we have to work with
Yes.
to figure out
These abilities.
what's going on and how we're going to compensate. How are we going to help communication? So I focus a ton on whole person, whole family. It's one of the most fundamental parts of my business,
Yeah.
because you can't just have trouble finding your words. You have trouble finding your words when you're talking to your spouse
Mhm.
or your adult kids or your grandkids, or if you're still working,
Mhm.
there's a whole lot of nuances in there that we have to address. So first we start from position of strength, we do an evaluation, and we figure out what are the big rocks. Remember the big bucket, right? You put the big rocks in first, then you throw in the little rocks and you shake it around and you fill up the bucket. We start with the big stuff first. What's going to make the biggest quality impact in somebody's life?
Yes. The goal.
I
What's their
I've
goal? Their
had
strengths.
I'm
What they're able
on
to-
these consult calls and they're just like, well, what about this and this and this? Well, if I don't meet your person and
Yeah.
know what their strengths are,
Yes.
it's a disservice to say what we can do until I understand the whole picture.
And we'll get back to the importance of having therapy involved. In my opinion, at every stage of dementia, this is so important because we want to see where that person's at. We want to see what strategies what we can do to help that person and help the family members involved to help that person as well. So
It,
important. So
it's so important to, I was literally dreaming last night, Mary, you're going to crack up at this. How do I get my families to understand what it's like to live in the mind of the person with aphasia?
Mhm.
Literally what I was dreaming about last night. What can I do? Because I get it, I understand it. But how do I get family members to understand it? And I imagine it's much the same for you,
Yes.
because when you walk in somebody's shoes,
Mhm.
then you get a different perspective on how to help them.
For sure. And it's being very like empathetic towards like what everyone's going through, right? The caregiver, the person living with dementia, and seeing how we can put all of that together in order to help everyone involved in care. And I think that's where we have a lot in common because we do that. We take into consideration what everyone's goals are and how everyone works together. And we see not just the person living with dementia, not just the person that has the stroke, but the family members involved too, and what we can do to help everybody. It's so important.
Yes.
I wanted to talk a little bit too about are you familiar with the rehabilitation versus habilitation model?
I've heard of it, but there are different nuances.
I know because I was thinking about it after I wrote this question for you because I'm sure in your approach, you're focused more on like the rehabilitation model. And I want to share this with everyone because it's so important when we're working with individuals living with dementia, when you have therapists involved in their care, because the rehabilitation model, this is a model that focuses on restoring function and getting that person back to how they were prior to the event that happened, which in your case, like if you're working with someone living with a stroke, your goal is probably to get them back to how they were pre-stroke, right? Or a hip replacement, maybe that person was completely independent before. I'm trying to get them back to being independent how they were before that happened. So, I'm working a lot on like maybe upper body strengthening, teaching them different strategies to help with their activities of daily living to get back to that status, right? But when I'm working with someone living with dementia, if I'm working with someone in the middle to end stages of dementia, I'm not going to just throw out my TheraBand and have them do TheraBand exercises. And this really shifts to this other model, the habilitation model, which I'll talk about in a second, because we have to have realistic goals for that person. I'm not going to get somebody in the middle to end stages of dementia back to the early stages of dementia because obviously dementia is progressive. So I'm having to shift my way of thinking, my approaches to better accommodate that individual and meet them where they're at. So the habilitation model, on the other hand, is a model that we use a lot when we're working with individuals living with dementia. Of course, I'm going to incorporate some aspects of the rehabilitation model as well, right? When it's appropriate. But we're really in the habilitation model creating a supportive and structured environment that emphasizes that person's remaining abilities. We talk a lot about strengths, abilities, and we enhance the quality of life through different activities that are tailored to that person's abilities. And when we do this, when we set up the environment in a way that helps enhance their quality of life, when we set up activities that meet them where they're at physically and cognitively, we are naturally promoting engagement and enhancing their quality of life, right? And we're doing this while we're also considering the progressive nature of dementia. So let's just say, I'm going to give an example of this in comparison to the rehabilitation model. So let's say I'm working with someone who is living with dementia, and let's say I'm working at a skilled nursing facility, okay? And I notice that I'm working with them at mealtime. I notice that they're not eating. And what I'm noticing during my evaluation is that they're looking at every single person walking by, right? And they're not eating their food. Well, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I see their attention is not so great. So they're really distracted, right? So is there a way that I can modify the environment to help facilitate this independence with their eating, to help with the food intake, right? So maybe I'm thinking about moving them to another table where they're facing the wall, right? With some other friends around and not where everyone else is walking by where they're so distracted, right? And then maybe I'm thinking about changing the color of the plate from like a white plate to a red plate to help with the food intake. So in this example, I'm setting up the environment, I'm doing these different things to help enhance their independence while meeting them where they're at so they can have better food intake, so they can have that increased attention to the task. So I wanted to bring this up because I know that this is not something that a lot of people talk about. And I wanted to kind of like share the differences with this and kind of get your perspective on this too.
Oh, you're speaking my language, Mary. When we're talking about the context of stroke, yes, we're rehabbing, we're trying to get them back. But once you have aphasia, I hate to say it's never gone. It's better. There's lots of compensatory strategies. We can work on the impairment itself, but we can't always, unless somebody's had something like a transient ischemic attack, something they call a mini stroke that resolves in a day or two.
Mhm.
It's like a warning sign. That's how the doctors think of a TIA. But when somebody's had a full blown stroke and there is a loss of oxygen to the brain or there's a brain bleed, that part is gone. So
Yeah.
the brain, we have to make reconnections. We are rehabbing that brain so we can work on the impairments and compensatory strategies. What you're talking about, like changing the plate color and where the person is positioned in the room, we do that in speech and language as
Yeah.
well.
It
And
kind of overlaps a little.
it's a huge part of what I do, especially in the chronic aphasia space.
Mhm.
Chronic aphasia is typically defined as 6 months or more
Okay.
past, because I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but there is what they call with a stroke this spontaneous recovery period, and give or take 6 months, depends on who you talk to.
The
And
first 6 months meeting is
the first 6
most
months, you
crucial,
have a
correct?
stroke, you have
Yeah.
aphasia, those first 6 months, you have what's called spontaneous recovery. If you were to do no therapy, yes, you're gonna get some improvement. You add therapy on top of that spontaneous recovery, and you get much more improvement. But then what happens past that spontaneous recovery period? That's when the you know what hits the fan, because now the dust is settled at home.
Mhm.
Now people are realizing, "Oh god, we're going to have to figure something out. Like,
Yeah.
this is not going away." So I talk a lot with my families about how do we understand the environment? How do we set it up for success? That's how I always
Yeah.
phrase it.
So at that point, you probably are using more of the habilitative approach.
Absolutely.
We start off with like the rehabilitation and then kind of move towards
It's
because
really
even
both, because with stroke
if
recovery and aphasia,
Mhm.
people can recover years later. I have
That is
plenty of examples of this.
yes.
It's just it might be slower, but there's always another way. There's always a way to do it. So I don't think about rehab versus habilitative. I think that's more in your area, but it is about understanding the environment and compensations.
Yes. Yes. I
But
tot
that's what families have to understand. If your person with aphasia is having a hard time concentrating, thinking of their thought before they can even put the words together to say it. If you've got the TV going on and the grandkids running around in the house, they are not going to get it out.
yeah.
So big conversations have to happen in a much more relaxed, quiet environment, not at the end of the day, more earlier in the day. I mean, so you and I, with the folks that we support, there is a lot of overlap.
Yeah, for sure.
We have to look at the big picture and the little picture.
Well, yeah, and there is going to be overlap, especially whenever you are looking at the whole person, right? Because you're doing all these different things to help, right? I'm not just like people think occupational therapist, you're just working on the upper body. I'm like, no, that is not what I do. I see the whole person. I look at everything
That's
that
right.
the person can do. I am not just looking at how strong their upper body is or what their fine motor coordination like is like, you
But
know?
I would say, Mary, 20 years ago,
Yeah.
we were kind of compartmentalized,
Yes,
right?
yeah,
As the rehab team.
yeah. I've never looked at it. It's just so funny when I think about that. I'm like, I just could never look at it that way. I'm like, no, this is a person. I'm treating the whole person, not just their upper body.
Right. And you're doing you have to look at the whole family, because you have to look at the family relationships. You have to look at the dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there's conflict with a husband and wife, whether the other person has dementia or aphasia, we have to consider in how the strategy, we can't just give
Mm-hmm.
strategy and think it's going to work. We have to look at the whole situation. So it's what kills me on, I'm on a bunch of Facebook groups and I see people just giving this band-aid prescription. Well, you have to do this. I'm like, but did you ask all the follow-up questions to understand what the whole situation looks like?
For sure. For sure. Now, I know we threw out the word compensatory strategies. What does that look like in your area?
Ooh, compensatory strategies, things like using your iPhone. A
Mhm.
lot of people with aphasia have, unless, again, it's a generational thing. Somebody in their 80s and up are not going to have an iPhone, but anybody younger than that has been exposed. So we can use the phone for things like programming words in it, then the phone can speak for them. Plus, there's tons of apps out there that
Mhm.
can help speak for you. There are apps that can read things to you.
Yeah.
Like Google Lens is one of the apps that I just became aware of, where you open it up and you can walk around your environment and have it read things to you.
Oh, I didn't know about that one. I just wrote that
I
down.
know.
Write this into
I was
writing.
on a podcast last week. It was all about telepractice. And so I was there representing the adult section of speech pathology. And the co-guest, her name's Michelle Avier, and her specialty is working with kids and autism.
Uh-huh.
Actually has a PhD in like telepractice and everything related to it. It's really cool. And she told me about Google Lens. So she was giving the example of her kids with autism and ADHD or any kind of learning, reading disability. They walk around the classroom and have the posters read to them with their phone.
That is so cool.
How amazing could that be? If somebody can't read it, but
Yeah.
they can understand some from hearing,
Yeah. That's
that
a
is a game. What about a menu?
yeah.
What about all these menus that are not
Yeah.
friendly for a language disorder,
Yeah.
right? Because not all of them are IHOP menus with big pictures.
Yeah.
IHOP, Denny's, Applebee's all have these beautiful, ginormous menus with pictures.
Yeah.
How do you go to the local sushi restaurant that has all text
Yeah.
and no pictures?
That's cool. So Google Lens is the one.
Google Lens. If you have an iPhone, you can't get it through the Apple Store, but you can go to the Google Play Store
Okay.
and download it. Or if you have an Android phone, you can get it.
Cool. That's great to know about.
So us walking around with these computers in our pocket
Hmm.
is amazing. But there's other things we can do. There's low tech ways. Many of my clients have what are called aphasia cards. And what that means, it's got like their name and their phone number, or like in case of emergency on one side. But on the flip side, it says their main strategies to communicate with them, like speak a little slower, use simple sentences,
Love
give
that.
me time to respond. Here in Texas, Mary, I don't know if you know this. I only just learned this a couple of years ago. In Texas, you can get what's called a communication. I don't want to say it's impairment. They use a different word for it. But on your driver's license, you
Hmm.
can fill out a separate form that says communication. I'm going to say impairment because I can't remember the word. It says communication impairment on it. So if you were driving and had aphasia and you got pulled over, your driver's license would say communication impairment, and that triggers the police officer to treat you
Oh,
in a different way. Does
that's
that make
cool.
sense? Because I'll give you a horror story. This is actually a friend of ours. He had a stroke while he's driving in Los Angeles,
Oh
hit
my-
the center median. He had a bleed right here in the temporal lobe. Like if you think where your ear is, that's a temporal lobe. So he gets out of his car. He has fluent aphasia. Remember, go back to fluent aphasia. Fluent aphasia is the normal prosody, normal sounding speech. He's not making a lick of sense, but he can walk,
Yeah.
right? Because we always think stroke takes out the right side of
Yeah.
the body.
Everyone. Yeah.
Fluent aphasia, a pure fluent aphasia, you don't get that weakness on the right hand side. He could not talk and
Oh.
make any sense. They thought he was drunk or he was on drugs.
Mm.
So what happened to him? They
Uh,
set him on the side of the road for
oh,
hours, like 2 hours. He's with a police officer. He went to jail, right? Jail's like the holding cell. And it wasn't until somebody came on duty 6 hours after his accident that said, there's something medically wrong with him. They took him to the hospital, found a massive bleed.
oh my gosh.
He had fluent aphasia. He could talk,
Yeah.
but not make any sense. And he could move because the right side wasn't taken out.
How's he doing?
He's 59 years old. His stroke was 6 years ago. He was an attorney. He was a very successful attorney, and he lives in an assisted living facility. And his brother is his conservator.
Yeah.
That means the brother oversees his care and makes sure that he's
Yeah.
taken care of. He himself, his comprehension has come a long way.
Mhm.
I mean, he wouldn't be able to tell you what this was. He couldn't use a fork in the beginning. He had all sorts of issues understanding what normal objects were.
Yeah.
But he came back from that. But
That's-
he can't always express himself. He can do I would say he can get out 60% of what he needs to say. You get the basics,
Yeah.
but he can't work as an attorney with that.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So
Yeah.
I got a million stories. I don't want to take all your
Yeah.
time with that. So keep going, Mary.
Okay. Let's go back to how we were talking about the importance of working with therapy at every stage of dementia. Personally, I'm a huge advocate for getting therapy involved, especially when there's a decline going on. And that can be getting a referral for speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy when you notice that your person is having a decline. Because the therapist can come in, evaluate, like we mentioned, they'll look at what that person can do, they'll look at what that person can do and make realistic goals based on that. And this can really help that person and also the family members involved, because then we can train the family members on the things that we're seeing and what that person is able to do to help support everyone involved. So I just wanted, because I know a lot of people might have trouble getting that order, from the doctor for therapy. But sometimes it's like, if you're at that appointment, you're talking about other things and that might not be the thing that comes up, right? So I'm a huge advocate of, like, if you notice that a decline is happening, if you notice that something's getting worse, and of course, with dementia, it is progressive. So you will notice that person having a decline. So this is when you really have to just advocate for your loved one and say, is there any way that I can have an order for occupational therapy? I see that they're having a decline with being able to feed themselves. Same thing, speech therapy. I see that they're having more trouble getting their words out. I just want to see if there's anything that we can do. I want to see what this person is able to understand, what they're not able to understand, right? Just so that can help with that person being able to communicate, and then you being able to communicate with that person as well. So I'm a huge advocate on asking the doctor for that order and telling them about the decline that's happening. And hey, can you write this order for therapy if you are the medical power of attorney involved in care?
There's a lot to unpack right there. So I'm going to try and start at the top.
I know, sorry, I started rambling.
No, not one bit, because because I'm in the chronic aphasia space, I get to hear far more from the family about the day-to-day experience. And
Yeah.
everything I experience in the aphasia world completely applies to the dementia.
Yeah.
So let's see. Let's make sure I can keep all this in mind. First thing, if you're noticing your person is getting more forgetful, they're having trouble with their words, they leave the stove on, whatever you're noticing, you may not want to, and you're going to the doctor with that person, you may not want to bring it up, because then that's kind of like mom and dad, tattling on each other, right?
Yes. We talked about this on the Q&A with Dr. Bertelson about how to
Absolutely.
fight
Oh
that
my
note
gosh.
from the doctor
I'd love
beforehand.
to actually see that video.
Yeah.
So what can a family member do? You get on the phone. Doctors are not gods. I'm just gonna say, and I think Dr. Bertelson would say the same thing,
Yeah.
right? They are still human.
Yeah.
They still have to get up and eat breakfast like the rest of us, right? Just because they went to school more doesn't, right? So, because I think a lot of families are they put the doctors on the pedestal and they don't get what they need from the doctor. They take whatever the doctor says, they don't question it, they don't push back, they just follow orders or
Mhm.
they don't comply, right? It's usually one or the other. Okay, so you notice something's going on with your person. Call the doctor's office, get on the phone with a nurse, not the receptionist. Get on with a nurse and be very specific. I see leaving the stove on. I see whatever it is that you're seeing. Be very specific and no fluff. Give them the bullet points and literally say, I need the doctor to assess my person
Mhm.
for possible memory issues or
Mhm.
possible speech issues. Because with primary progressive aphasia, the first things that are going to be seen is a change in language. It's not going to be a change in memory.
Yeah. And you're saying this at the very beginning, like
At the
if
very
they're
beginning,
noticing any changes. Okay, got it.
noticing any and
Changes.
also I would keep that lifeline with make a relationship with the nurse in the doctor's office. If
Mhm.
that's a doctor that you're seeing, get
Yeah.
to know her. Ask her, is she married and has no build a relationship because then that means you're going to give her information that she gives to the doctor and you can get full circle care. We have to make sure we are in contact with the doctor. Now, when the
The
doctor makes
beginning stages, all and then throughout care as well.
throughout care, have that relationship. There is no reason to be fearful of a doctor.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't be fearful. They are not king, they are not queen. They are here to serve you. Yes, they may be busy.
Yeah.
And if they can't give you the time of day, get a different
Yeah.
doctor. All right. Um,
I know, I see that a lot too, so that's very true.
so beyond that, the doctor, if you communicate to the doctor and the doctor says, well, go see this person, ask, does this person specialize in dementia? Do they have
Mhm.
experience in it? Does this person specialize in aphasia for me? Does this person know what on earth primary progressive aphasia is, for example?
Exactly.
Because and I'll give you my soapbox about telepractice, but you don't have to settle for the speech therapist, the occupational therapist down the street because they are geographically close to you,
Mhm.
or that's the only person the doctor knows about.
Yeah.
Ask the questions. Be empowered to say, hey, doc, can I get a written prescription for that?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to shop around.
And that leads me to asking for you too. So you work through telehealth. So through Zoom sessions with the person who has had the stroke, primary progressive aphasia, whatever it may be. And just to clarify, someone who's has like mild cognitive impairment or early stages of some sort of dementia, right? Like you,
Yes.
okay. If if the caregiver is taking their loved one to the doctor and they wanted them to see you for speech therapy for telehealth, how can they do that? What can they tell the
Uh,
doctor? Write this
uh,
order for
right. Write this order and here's her fax number, or here's her email, or write me a
and
prescription.
and I will put
Phone
all of her
call.
information and everything in the portal for you guys. So then y'all will have that.
Yeah. I don't have to have a prescription to start treatment on someone.
Oh,
So
you don't have to. Okay.
I do not have to have a prescription. So, but I'll give you the caveat. If somebody is coming to me through Medicare and I am a Medicare provider, I'm a participating provider. If someone comes to me with Medicare, their doctor has to sign my evaluation within 30 days.
Okay.
So what they really need is hey, doc, I want to see this speech pathologist. Are you okay with that? And if they give you a verbal yes, then that's more than likely they're going to sign my evaluation.
Okay.
But let's say worst case, they don't sign the evaluation, I don't get paid.
Yeah.
And it's not all about the pay, but doing an evaluation, as you know, Mary, is hours of
Yeah.
time and effort,
Very involved.
energy, right? So I don't have to have a prescription from the doctor. I just ask families when they call me for a consult, have you talked to your doctor about speech therapy and are they cool with it? Will they support you? And if they waffle at all, then I say, call your doctor and ask them.
Yeah. And see if they, so do you take Medicare? Do you take any other type of insurance?
I do not.
Okay.
So how I do, and the reason for that is I've been in telepractice for 10 years. I am in 12 states. I am licensed in 12 states
Oh,
currently.
can you tell us the states just so we know? Because I know we have individuals.
If I can possibly remember, okay, let's see. California, Massachusetts, Georgia, Ohio, Illinois, Kentucky, West Virginia. I'm trying to visualize my map. Idaho, Washington State.
Oh, you can give me a list of these and then we'll put them.
I know, right?
That way,
But the idea is so let's parse a little bit of thing. If
Okay.
I'm seeing a person for their treatment, if I'm doing speech pathology treatment with a person with Medicare, for example, I have to be licensed in that state. If I'm just coaching the caregivers,
Mhm.
which I do, I don't have to be licensed in the state. If I'm
Gotcha.
not coaching the
Okay.
person, much like how you do with your courses and information.
For sure.
So, but if there's any question, you book a free consultation with me and we talk it through.
Perfect. And the reason why I'm mentioning mild cognitive impairment or early stage dementia, because since you do telehealth, this would be the most appropriate for a telehealth.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't
have to
recommend
find-
someone in middle to late stage dementia with the telehealth session.
No, will not work. So the thing about telehealth, so telehealth became popular with the pandemic, as we all know, right?
Mhm.
Now everybody's doing it, but not everybody's appropriate. So in my field of speech pathology, it's very important for us to maintain our standard of care. I'm very specific when I see somebody on consultation. If they're not a right fit, I'm going to help them find somebody else.
For sure.
There's no, we're not, because I'm here to serve.
Mhm.
And if I can't serve them, I need to get them hooked up with somebody else that can serve them for what they need.
For sure. And I know we do have members in the group. I know we even have some members that might not actually even have that diagnosis yet, but they suspect it and they have the appointments with their doctors coming up, or they might even
Yeah.
earlier stage.
And evaluation.
Yeah.
Okay, so Medicare, so if somebody has insurance, because I'm in 12 states, I don't take insurance because insurance changes, even
Mhm.
if it's Blue Cross between Texas and Idaho, and it's all different. You might as well have a different name to it.
Yeah.
I can't possibly manage that. So
Yeah.
how it works, if somebody comes in with an insurance, I empower my families to call their insurance, ask the right questions. And what they do is they pay my rate and then I give them a super bill and then they get reimbursed directly
Gotcha.
from their insurance company. And it's usually between 50 to 80% reimbursement.
But what about for Medicare? Is that covered?
Medicare is covered as long as I'm licensed in their state.
Okay, cool. It's good to know you guys.
But it has to be medically necessary. If they've just finished 6 months of speech therapy treatment for the same condition, and now they're coming to me on month 7, I'm not going to be able to justify it because it's going to be past that medical necessity. And that's a gray area that we talk about on the consultation. Otherwise, I have private pay, and what I love about private pay, the family gets to call the shots.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. I know we had one message. Oh, also, we're going to put your information in the chat too.
Great.
And then we'll put it in the portal just in case anyone wants to reach out and contact you. But we did have a question from someone in the community that said their mom has some features of aphasia she's periodically received speech therapy over the years and the symptoms are getting worse. For example, they'll ask questions like, how is, and then they won't know who she's talking about. And then they'll ask her, are you talking about this person? And then the person will say no. And then they'll be like, are you talking about this person? And she'll say no. And then the person just ends up getting frustrated. They've tried running through they'll ask for the news about people, but we don't know who she's asking about. We've tried running through the news that they have, but she doesn't seem satisfied with that. Person has trouble verbalizing anything, like getting the words out. She seems like she knows what she wants to say, but can't really express it or get those words out. So can you offer any tips or strategies to make communication less frustrating for all of us?
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. So first off, I would say if she's not had therapy in a while, and a while could be 3 months, 6 months. If you have felt that there's a significant change in her condition, number one, you need to see a speech pathologist and not necessarily the one down the street. You need, if there's one down the street, you call and find out, are you experienced in this area?
Yeah.
Describe, just like that question came across, Mary, describe that situation and see if the speech pathologist can handle it.
Yes.
Because just like there's led with kids and adults therapy, within just the adult world, there's a lot of nuances, and you can't possibly learn it all in school.
Yeah.
It's on the job training. So you really want to get an evaluation to work with a speech pathologist. That being said, what ideally would happen, you do the evaluation, they look at your mom, I think it was
Yes.
mom's strengths, but we also have to look at the family dynamic and we figure out what strategies could work, right? When I see somebody on an evaluation, I'm probing for how do they respond to pictures? How do they respond to written words? Do they do well with just verbal words? Do they
Mhm.
have to be in a completely quiet, distraction-free environment?
Yeah.
Versus can they handle my dog barking? He's not barking right now, but
Yeah.
right, there's so many environmental factors we have to consider. So the thing that happens, maybe your mom has something like an aphasia, but that progresses, right? I don't know her onset, I don't know the medical history, but let's say it starts with word finding and it turns into more of a memory issue.
Mhm.
We have to figure out what she responds to, and we have to try it. Because
Mhm.
right now, I can't just give you, oh, buy this communication board and it's going to work.
Yeah.
Can she formulate her thought? Can she hold on to her thought more than 5 seconds
Mhm.
to be able to answer questions? Can she hold on to her thought long enough for you to say, Mom, is it about Juliet?
Yeah.
Where the person now has to compare, what is this thought versus what did she just hear? And can she make that connection between the two? Does that
For
make sense?
Yeah, for
There
sure.
is so much complexity to it that you have to work with somebody who understands
Yeah.
how language works.
Yeah. And can really assess that person. Like this is what we call an individualized assessment because the speech therapist is coming in
Completely.
there, doing that evaluation, seeing what that person is that person able to understand? Can they read words? What exactly is going on with this entire picture, right? And whenever I see this question, I'm wondering too. So I'm wondering a few things like are there certain people that are important to this person that she would be asking about on a consistent basis, right? Maybe it's someone that you guys see a lot. So in that case,
Great point.
maybe if that person is asking that question at maybe it's the same time every day, maybe it's every morning, she's like, how is blah, blah, blah. Maybe getting ahead of that. And if you know the person that she could possibly be asking about or know like a few different people, you could just, have something written like if they can understand. This is again when they would need assessment to see if this person could actually read, right? So and so is doing great. Here are some pictures of the kids, and then like show them something memorable from that person, right? So these are just some general thoughts without knowing the specifics of
Right,
this.
exactly. I mean, when I do a consult with someone, I start understanding who are the immediate communication partners. And
Yeah.
then as I go through the evaluation and really get to know them, I know the details of their family. I know if it's a husband and wife, I know how they met. I know from
Mhm.
their adult kids to the grandkids. And if there's greats, I know those too, because I keep track of it. So, what you're saying, you and I are often on the same page. We have to understand who are they possibly talking about so that when we ask clarifying questions, is how we put it.
Mhm.
Are you talking about Jeanette? Are you talking about Leo? Here's Jeanette's picture. Here's Leo's picture. Who are you talking about? Or who are
Yeah.
you asking about?
Yeah.
Right? We want multimodal communication.
Or could that person
Pictures.
possibly be saying no, but really be meaning yes? You know what
Oh
I
my
mean?
gosh, I
That could happen
totally
too.
have this guy right now.
Yeah.
Totally have this guy right now. And you know from his expression, he means yes, but he
Yeah.
totally says no. And
Yeah.
he's
That could happen too.
consistent.
Yeah.
He's consistent with it. So that's how we know. And believe me, that's what we're working on because yes, no questions are fundamental to communication. Because
Yes.
even when, and I would think you would say the same, early dementia, moderate dementia,
Mhm.
if the person can hear a simple question and answer yes or no, then the care partner has a much better idea of what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. And then I'm also thinking about the question where you said she'll ask for the news about people. I'm also wondering if there's a particular part of the news that this person enjoys and maybe just pulling that out and then having that ready for them, something they
Absolutely.
like, and just having that on and seeing if that helps as well. So just kind of
Yeah.
thinking
That's
about like their past, like what they enjoyed, right? Or what would bring, or maybe like, things change too. So what they were interested in the past, that might not be what they're interested in now. So just trying different things and maybe something good that's happening on the news, right? And sharing that. And
and the new, but
hey,
with
this
the
is what's
news,
happening,
it's so fast. I do a
Exactly.
lot of YouTube videos with folks
Mhm.
for different therapeutic reasons. Changing the speed. Do you all know that you can change the speed on a YouTube video? Yes, they might be talking, but that plus captions
Yes.
could really help. So these are
In
all,
smaller segments, right? Not like
oh,
everything
yeah,
all at once, because that could be
that's
a
right.
lot for that person to
Too much.
understand, right? And it's that processing time too. So it takes that person a lot to process all that information, that they're like take in all that information and then formulating a response after that. That's a lot of cognitive processes involved.
And that's why you need an evaluation with a person that understands what you're going through so they can help you with these very specific strategies
Mhm.
like you and I were just
Yes.
spitballing about.
Yeah,
It's
for
it's
sure.
natural for us because we've been in the industry for so long.
Hmm. Hmm.
But we have to teach our folks how to
Yes.
do it.
Yes, yes. So individualized assessment, but in the meantime, you can try some of those strategies with just beforehand, telling them what's going on with that particular family member, and then the tone that we use to, like the excitement that we bring
Oh,
into things, that
sure.
really the energy that we bring really changes things up. And same thing with the news, making it, maybe sharing a segment that is short, that doesn't have a lot of things that is being thrown at that person.
I just can't think the news is good, Mary. There's a reason
Actually,
I cut the cable at my house.
I don't watch the news, but there is the good news. Have you heard about this?
No,
Oh my goodness. I thought it was the good news. Good news, good talks, the goodnewsnetwork.org.
I don't
I
know
thought
it.
there was
I'm
another
gonna
one.
put
Okay.
this, let's see if I can put this in the chat and Stephanie can repost it if I can do this. Okay, talkpathnews.aphasia.com. This is put out by a company that makes um their talking devices. It's called augmentative computers.
Okay.
What they have is this wonderful website, and they're calling it like 1 minute news. They take stuff it's not fully current. It's not like what happened yesterday, but they'll take a generic category like education, entertainment, lifestyle, and they'll take a story and they'll condense it down into a very simple, large print. So talkpathnews.aphasia.com is what I put in the chat.
Oh, this is cool. So sorry, I interrupted you. Would you say it takes little clips?
It takes little clips of interesting stories, things about science, things about whatever. And it's great for people. It's bite-sized pieces of news, and you pick your category.
Okay, this is great. Yes, so try that. Let us know if that helps too.
I love it. I
Okay.
love it. I use it a lot for treatment because I'm going to go back to my 20-year-old that I see for therapy, the gentleman with the benign brain tumor.
Mhm.
His passion before he had his brain tumor was fragging corals. Any idea what that means?
Bragging?
Fragging with an F.
Oh,
Frag.
fragging. Okay.
So
No.
you take a saltwater coral
Uh-huh.
and you cut it into pieces, you grow it, and you sell it. He was a full entrepreneur
Cool.
selling these corals. So I got on TalkPath News with him and I typed in the search box corals, came up with a bunch of articles, and that's what we used as our treatment idea. Because, right, we're personalizing them, just like you have said through this whole interview. We personalize to what's important and interesting to the person. It's about him and what motivates him.
Yeah. Motivation. Motivation.
Motivation
Very,
is
very
huge. I
accurate.
don't care what population you work with.
Mhm. Yeah. Motivation, sense of purpose, it's all ability,
All of it. Sense of purpose is huge.
energy. It's-
No, Mary, we could talk. We could
I know,
do it
I'm sorry. Okay, I was
for
already
10
on
hours.
my time.
No,
But thank you so much, Genevieve. I'm going to put all of your information. Let us know if you guys have any questions. This was so great. Thank you for being here.
my pleasure. And, to your audience, if I can be of assistance, when it comes to speech and language, that's my bag. That's my gig.
Yes. Yes. I let the
And
experts
so,
do their thing and what they're good at. So,
absolutely. We all have our wheelhouse.
yes.
But if I can be of assistance, or, free consultations are available through my website, dolifespeechpathology.com. I know it's a long one, but it's in the chat.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Listen for Life podcast. We hope you feel empowered and supported. Head over to listenforlifepodcast.com to see the show notes with links and information from today's episode. Do you have a topic, a resource to share, or a guest recommendation? Inquiring minds want to know. Let us know in the comments section. Wishing you a fabulous week.